I was speaking at an event last week and I said, look, if your CEO is not playing around with these tools themselves, you need to quit. You are in an organization that is about to get wiped out. This is not a change that you delegate. Suddenly the bookkeepers were able to do this. Now, pardon the language, but I've long called this the oh fuck moment of AI. It's the bit where you go, this is not just a little gimmick. This is actually real tech that's really helping me. So for the non-techies, that was their moment. I would like to remind people, I receive billions and billions of software error reports from your code already. You're not as good a developer as you think you are while you're sitting here telling me that, oh no, AI makes mistakes.
Welcome to the Tech Waka podcast, where we dive into the journeys of New Zealand's top tech leaders. Your host for today is Jakub, bringing you conversations with tech leaders and innovators from across Aotearoa. Join us as we uncover the experiences, challenges, and successes that shape our tech community. This episode of the Tech Waka podcast is proudly brought to you by Wires Uncrossed, lifting the standard of software delivery across New Zealand, Australia, and beyond. A big thanks to Wires Uncrossed for supporting the Tech Waka mission and backing the voices of our tech leadership community. To learn more, go to wiresuncrossed.co.nz.
Today on Tech Waka, I'm sitting down with Trask, co-founder and CEO of Raygun and Autohive, and one of New Zealand's most inspiring and thought-provoking tech and business leaders. JT has been building global software companies from Wellington for nearly 20 years. And when AI arrived, he rebuilt his entire businesses around it. We talked about why he told a room full of people to quit if their CEO isn't using AI. Also, what happened when he shut down his company for a week and made the bookkeepers pass an engineering test, and why he thinks the biggest risk isn't AI making mistakes, it's humans pretending they don't either. Let's get into it. Hi JD, how are you?
I'm excellent. How are you?
Very good. I suspect that you're quite well known in New Zealand's tech community, but for some people that, may have not heard about you or haven't heard your story, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I consider myself a bit of a nerd's nerd. I've been mad into software development since I was 8 years old in QBasic back then. And I always wanted to build software companies. So I graduated university, worked at Intergen for 3 years, which was awesome. And then struck out on my own 19 years ago, building various businesses, mostly across developer tools, but also in non-tech spaces as well. And today I'm the co-founder and CEO of two businesses. One is Raygun, which does software observability, especially around software error reporting. And I'm the co-founder and CEO of an AI company called Autohive.
Right. Autohive, AI company that seems quite trendy. How did you end up going from telemetry and observability monitoring to AI?
So Raygun is already a successful SaaS company. So it's used all over the world. Thousands and thousands of developers are using it every day. And when the ChatGPT moment came through, I had a sense that this was a huge change that was about to hit us. And so I started upskilling the team on AI, really pushing pretty hard, even right back at the start of 2023. And more I used it, the more convinced I was that this was the future. And then I started to have to ask questions of myself as the CEO of Raygun. How should I be rethinking our operational processes? How should the business change to be AI native? And once I just started going down that track and started mapping out what would need to change for us to operate that way, it became really clear that the current tools in the market were extremely deficient in being able to help an organization be AI native. I like to use a bit of the analogy that I still think we're in the email stage of the internet as the reference. Okay. So a lot of people don't really think these days, oh gosh, I've got to get an internet connection so I can get email. But when the internet first came along, that was the hook. That was the idea that I could send a message, it would be there in a second, and it didn't cost me a 25-cent stamp. And I think right now, most people are still using AI. Like I can go and ask it to answer a question or do a thing, but they're quite primitive asks. So we're in the email stage. And as with the internet, today nobody's getting the internet because they need email. They're doing e-commerce, their friends are there, or the world's information, everything is on the internet. And so I think we're still very much at day zero of the AI movement. And that was where I found the gaps. And to give an example to the listeners, the most obvious one to me is business is a collaborative team sport. All of these tools are currently being used one-on-one. So why are we in single player mode in our businesses when we should be in multiplayer mode? And so that was one small example of something that we wanted to factor into Autohive was how do we put our whole team in here to collaborate with AI agents and get work done like a team should.
All right, I think we need to go into the details of that because I'm now curious. What does it really mean?
Yeah, across the teams, it varies. So one of the things that's been really important to me as a business leader was not to just focus on the engineering team. As most of the listeners will know, the AI coding tools, some of the best AI tools that are out there. Once you go outside of that world, you find it's quite lacking for everybody else.
Yeah, I agree.
And there's a range of reasons for that. In fact, at the risk of going abstract for a second, one of the things that I think needs to evolve within business thinking is starting to look at the loops in an organization. So at the moment, if we look at software development, we have really tight loops, which is I write code, I test that it compiles, I test that it passes the test, I do the linter.
Yeah.
If that's all good, I commit the code. Now, the reason that AI has taken off with coding is because it's like a perfect machine learning model, right? In effect, you have that ability to do those tests, or as they're sometimes called in traditional ML, fitness functions. Did it pass? Yeah. Those sorts of things. And so coding has an extremely fast feedback loop, and that allows an AI to run in loops for a long time. But the more you start to look out across an organization, you see these loops everywhere. So a good example is your AdWords or marketing. Okay, marketing doesn't have an immediate feedback loop. If I change an ad now, I don't know if it works immediately, but within a couple of days I do. And at that point, you can feed that back in and optimize that loop. And you start to see these loops all through your organization, every single team. There are certainly some things that don't necessarily have an easy fitness function to test against, but there are a lot. And so starting there and elevating up beyond just, hey, I asked a question, I got an answer, to self-improving loops, that's what's going to allow for a sort of a recursive acceleration of a business overall. Now, to be super clear, we're not there yet, but that's the sort of line of thinking we have. So in our organization, it was a case of saying, okay, look, the coding tools are great. We're not going to try and reinvent coding tools. Let's let the VC Silicon Valley dollars go and do that all they want. But what about everybody else in the organization? And more recently, you have seen tools like Claude Cowork. We get asked a lot, why not use that? And usually I say to people, have you used it? And their answer is no. And it's not really a competitor yet. So similarly, they're definitely going in that direction, but it's still predominantly, as I say, in a single player mode. You can add people to a chat, but I can't sit there and chat with Claude, ChatGPT, and Grok all in one chat. And I certainly can't do it with 5 of my colleagues in one of the teams while we're working together. Those sorts of things are not currently in existence in the AI landscape today. And classic engineer, if it's not out there, we'll build it ourselves. But to run through some use cases, and some of these will relate to people, some of them will not, but I'll start personally. One of the ones I have is an assistant that I've built on Autohive that reads my email, reads my calendar, has full access to my Google Docs. It loads in all of my goals across the various businesses, as well as my personal goals. It analyzes my day, and I can sit there and chat with it about how I want to run the day, but it also sends me an email before I wake up that basically says, here's your day. Here's all the people you're going to be talking to. I've cross-referenced it with everybody in your inbox. I've put in reminders about previous conversations, and I've highlighted key places where this might meet the strategic goals related to my goals. And I've found that actually to be quite a useful little agent. Now, that's just a single player one, but many people in the organization now do that to help themselves. To go to a multiplayer one, as an example, we have an AI agent that runs on Autohive that has full access to our product analytics and back-end data stores in a read-only mode. And that allows us to ask the what-if questions. So for example, again, this audience will know delivering a product and making it successful is not a straight line. you have to figure out and adapt. And we're absolutely in that stage with Autohive today. So we're accumulating customers, usage is growing, and that's really cool. But like anyone, you sit there and say, but how could we improve that further? So we've built this agent and it allows us to ask what if questions. So literally last night, I was looking into the changes that we made around preventing spam signups and how that had impacted the first user journey. Can just sit there and ask those questions in plain English. It'll go off and do the analysis across the analytics database and report it back. But more importantly, I can then tag in some of the people in our product and delivery teams. I can tag in the marketing folks. We can sit there, they can ask their own questions. And in some cases, we bring in another agent to say, hey, given this, go and write, say, a product requirements document for improvements we'll make to the onboarding process. And that's an example. Our AdWords is largely looked after by agents now. We get reports when trials sign up. We do full lead analysis. That hydrates the data in our HubSpot. The HubSpot emails are getting personalized. So just the way I see it is I look at the org and I just think like everywhere AI should be doing things and helping the team. And I think one of the issues is that in this moment, a lot of people are fearful of AI. And they're thinking things like, this could take my job, or this is going to lead to some negative outcome. I think the worry I have is that there's way too much zero-sum thinking going on in that calculus. Or one way I put it is, one of the taglines in COVID here in New Zealand was, we're the team of 5 million.
Yeah.
AI should allow us to work like we're the team of 50 million, right?
Wow.
If we should have that mindset that we are increasing the output, not that we're going to say, you know what, we've built everything we ever need to build today, therefore we don't need any more humans, let's just automate the current state. That's just not how this is going to work. It's not how it ever works. And therefore that fear, I want people to interrogate themselves a little bit on the emotional side of that. I think it's a fight or flight response to change. And the best opportunity and advice I give to people right now is just run at it. The more you actually know how to wield this technology, the more valuable you are. And so just encouraging the audience to not fall into the trap of being too afraid of AI.
Yeah, I like to think about this with the abundance mindset, not scarcity mindset. Some roles may disappear. There are going to be new roles, and there are going to be maybe better roles, more interesting roles. Like, things will evolve. They have always been evolving.
Yeah, exactly. If you're a person who wanted to be employed to do the same thing over and over for 50 years, sure, you're probably staring down a problem, but you already had a problem there. So it's elevating everybody's level of operation up. There's a saying that it's been around forever, and it's usually directed at the sort of founder CEO types, where they say the mistake many of us make, and look, it's a mistake I make a lot, is that we end up working in our business, not on the business. So we don't look at the business as in an abstract sense and think, how do I improve it? We're so busy working in it that we don't look at the big picture. The reality is, I think that AI is actually going to create organizational structures that mean a higher proportion than just the CEO or founder is able to now work on the business, because the sort of toil and doing is being undertaken by these machines inside it. So you're elevating the human gray matter to more strategic concerns. And I think that should lead to better businesses.
If you don't have CEO looking at AI right now, I think that every business like this is in trouble.
I agree. I would go further than that. In fact, I have gone further than that. I was speaking at an event last week and I said, look, if your CEO is not playing around with these tools themselves, you need to quit. You are in an organization that is about to get wiped out. This is not a change that you delegate. I do think that this is going to be bigger than even the internet. So some folks use the analogy back to electricity, and it's, you wouldn't have delegated that. It's so important, and it does impact organizational operations, that actually having individual contributors, even the VP layer, you have to have the topmost organizational design thinkers with authority, which is the CEO, to be really understanding what's changing here. Because if they don't understand that, they will not understand how it applies to their company, and they'll do something dumb, think that the answer to AI is buying a bunch of Copilot licenses and sitting back.
If we look at the flip side of that, because many people are worried not only about their jobs, but they're worried about quality and security, privacy issues. how do you approach this? For example, giving your story with the marketing agents, do you have a human in the loop? How do you make sure the quality is high enough of what the agents do? How do you approach this from the quality and security privacy point of view?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I often do summarize that as the current most pressing concern, which is not what I'm going to say, though, is that a lot of people are using that framing as a reason to avoid or to shut it down or to not do it. And firstly, to those people, you're wrong. The thing to acknowledge is that we are in a time of change, and there is therefore a lot of unknowns, and therefore there will be a lot of outcomes that were not expected, whether that's a security problem, a privacy problem, etc. I'm with you that I think human in the loop is a very, very important concern. And in fact, in Autohive, it is baked right into the core. If you want an agent to send an email, it's going to pop up and ask for your approval. Now, a lot of us are coders, so we know what these approvals look like, but a lot of these systems that are not for coders don't have approval systems yet. We do. And we also make sure that it goes with you wherever you are. So we have native iOS and Android apps so that you just get a push notification sometimes. So that email I get in the morning about my day ahead, I actually wake up and have a push notification saying, are you happy for me to send this to you? And I quickly look at it and go, yes. And it comes through a moment later. So that's really important. But, and this kind of goes back to, we're all engineers and some of us are a bit older than others. But one thing I think people are forgetting is take, for example, the 90s with computing and the internet. And a lot of people do remember the internet tidal wave memo that Bill Gates put out when Microsoft had to adapt to the internet or die. But what a lot of people have now long forgotten is that around the year 2000, Microsoft also paused doing all feature work for about a year to 18 months. And now the reason that they did that was because they had absolutely horrible security. Everything was getting hacked. Everything was spamming. It was a huge problem, right? And so they were concerned that they were going to lose the trust of the market. Now, you could sit there and you could have been a person who sat there with your arms firmly crossed in the 90s and went, the security's not good enough. I'm just going to ignore this. And it's great. You would have just missed the entire internet and computing revolution. And also, why do you think starting once it's far more complex is going to help you get ahead? It won't. So that's why I challenge people on that. You're right to ask these questions and you're right to think about them as a tech leader and thinking about how you protect things. But you would be wrong if you think that rationale is enough for everybody to go, hey, we're going to stop all this then. I like to think about the human psychology of this, which is to say, why did we have so many security issues in the 90s? Again, it's back to change. We could not foresee all of the outcomes in ways that things would be used. But also, secondly, we were trying to get mass adoption. We get the blessing that we work with really smart people every day. And it may be a little bit of a bad thing to say, but not everybody is that smart. When you're actually building products where the whole of society has to get on board, boy, you've got to make that stuff pretty simplistic. And unfortunately, frequently simplistic and secure are at loggerheads. That's acknowledgement where it's due. This is something Apple has done really well, is trying to balance simplicity with security. I can't think of too many other organizations who have done it that well. It's a hard thing. But you just go, okay, we have seen these revolutions before. We have seen what has to happen when you need to enroll all of society. We have seen what happens when we're having to move fast and the frontier is shifting constantly. What does that mean? It means their security is usually a bit lax. And so then you need to address it. So we're trying to address that at Autohive. We are trying to make it, for example, everything is encrypted. It shocks me how many companies that are in AI talk about analyzing their customer chats. We can't even read it. We get a high level observability of how many tokens went in, how many went out, how long did it take. That's pretty much it. It's just like looking at a trace out of an APM product more than anything in there. So we do take it seriously, but at the same time, we also know that that psychology of learning is occurring. I like to think about where security's got to now, right? How many bloody times do I have to log into my Gmail, get my 2-factor, I got my 1Password, I get my one-time code, I got my all of these things. If we put all of that in like 1994, there'd still only be like 17 internet users.
Yeah, it's very, I also like to think, and I've heard it either in a podcast or in an audiobook, how, going back to your psychology of humans, how whenever a human makes a mistake, we accept that's part of being a human, and that's okay. but we have much higher bar when it comes to machines and AI. We just don't accept that.
Yes.
Even go to autonomous vehicles, how if there's an accident made by human, caused by human, that's just part of life. But if autonomous car hits another one, that's becoming a huge issue. Talk in the media, oh, we cannot go that way. But actually, we have all these accidents all the time anyway. So somehow we have that bar much higher. And if we just keep having humans doing stuff, we actually gonna keep making mistakes and having security issues, privacy issues. So what is really the difference? What is actually the risk of having AI doing this stuff?
Absolutely. I agree with you entirely on that. A good example, as you say, is full self-driving from Tesla. It currently drives more kilometers with less crashes than humans. And yet you see a lot of people going, it's not there yet. It's not there yet. And I've got bad news for you about the riskiest people are on the road with you, also agreeing with you that it's not there, but you're more likely to die. A few years back, I went through a time where I didn't really enjoy flying too much. And that's another classic case where it's statistically, I'm at higher risk crossing the road, but we fear flying at times. So I'm with you. One thing that has often been on my mind, because I've had a few people saying to me, like, but why are you so willing to take these risks? And I'm not talking about security, but like, why did you lean in so soon? Why was I dismissing the people who were saying, no, but AI makes mistakes so quickly? And I like to remind people, I receive billions and billions of software error reports from your code already. You're not as good a developer as you think you are while you're sitting here telling me that, oh no, AI makes mistakes. And I'm sitting here going, there's a reason I'm billing you $5,000 a month for all these errors that you made. So I don't know if that has changed my thinking, but it has led us to have an extreme culture internally of we almost celebrate when we find a mistake now. It's, hey, we found a thing to improve. Let's go and work on that. And I see all these, we'll take a little sidebar here, but I see all this stuff about blameless postmortems and all this sort of stuff. And I got to be honest, like most of that stuff is just pathetic to me. It's, we know it's the system that can be improved. We get that. But boy, like the performative nature of this theater of no accountability. And that leads people to do things like then go, oh, AI is a problem. And it's, man, you've set up an entire apparatus to discharge your own accountability for things. Like, maybe you go and put the time into doing that for AI. And that's why I get frustrated when I see people saying, oh, the AI made the mistake. I'm like, AI is just software. And it's, oh no, it's a different type of software. I'm like, no, it's not. We always had random number generators, guys. It wasn't deterministic as you think it is. And if it was, why are you making any bugs at all? It's a bit of a folly to fall into those traps. And to be blunt, that's where I often see the organizations or poor performing engineering teams spend far too long on that sort of behavior than actually just being like, we've seen an issue, we're going to go and fix it and tackle it and just be upfront and move it forward. They seem to need meetings and post-its to do anything. I strongly discourage that type of culture of thinking in my organizations.
I wonder if you could briefly talk about a couple of things that I know you did in your companies. One of those things was AI Week. Can you tell us a bit more about that? How did you approach it? How did it come about? What were some of the results?
This was around April or May. I think it might have been April 2023. I paused the company's usual work for a week. I was finding I was already enamored with AI, and I wanted to elevate the level of conversation that we were having in the company. So one of the things that stands out to me is if I want to talk about something and I think it's important, my first question is, have I got folks with the level of understanding necessary for us to make that a fruitful conversation? And my realization was the answer was no. Now, to be super clear, that didn't mean I thought I knew everything. It was more like I wanted to talk about this so we could figure it out. So figure it out together and learn together. And I decided that we wouldn't do our normal work for that week, with one exception, which was that when we come in, customer support still comes first. Customers, I bang the drum on this a lot in the company. So even if I go and buy like coffee for the team in the morning and they'll say, hey, thank you, JD. I'll say, no, don't thank me. Thank the customer. It's their money that bought the coffee, not me. I just simply selected to spend some of it on the coffee. But the customer is the most important entity in the business, and therefore we need to focus on them. So we do the customer support. What we did was on Monday morning, and keep in mind, this was early ChatGPT. I don't think GPT-3 maybe had just, I can't even remember back then. So we got everybody licenses for that at the start of that year. And then for the first 4 hours of the AI week, we had every person individually do our engineering hiring test. We've all seen them. Give some sort of brain teaser problem, write some code that solves it, explain it. Everybody in the organization managed to pass our engineering hiring test. Suddenly the bookkeepers were able to do this. Now, pardon the language, but I've long called this the oh fuck moment of AI. It's the bit where you go, this is not just a little gimmick. This is actually real tech that's really helping me. So for the non-techies, that was their moment. They were like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Then we broke into cross-functional teams. So you might have a customer success member with one engineer with, say, a person in finance. Those little squads then had to build agents across the week and demonstrate them at midday on Friday. I think we had 7 or 8 demos on that Friday, and largely they were left alone for the week. Anything that they needed, they could ask for. Anything they needed to spend money on to get, we would pay for, those sorts of things. And so by the end of that week, the one that stood out the most was that one of the teams had it so that they could now ask the computer about our company policies. So they said, hey, I'm thinking about taking leave at Christmas. What do I need to do for this? And it talked back and said, hey, what you need to do is you need to talk to your manager. We have a 2-week shutdown from this date. You need to apply no later than this date. Would you like me to draft the email for you? Now, this used a speech-to-text, an LLM, and a text-to-speech model all together, plus a RAG store over our documentation. This is something that the team of 3 people built effectively in 4 days, having not known anything about AI previously. And so that really, it elevated the team at this point where they were starting to think in terms of agents. They were starting to see the power of what was coming. And also not just the power, but how quickly they could move by applying AI. So that was how that week ran. And it did a great job at really elevating that conversation about how else could we use these in our company? How could we accelerate our output, not just in code, but streamline the operations and become much more efficient? It was a great way to operate. I've had a lot of people come and ask me about that. And what I do these days is not super often, but I'll now have different types of weeks every now and then where we similarly pause the company and we go all in on a mission together. The most recent one was in February this year where we went, okay, we launched Autohive at the end of June 2025. We spent the next 6 months kind of user testing, getting that early feedback. We all know how this goes in product world. And then coming into 2026, the question was, okay, how do we now accelerate the growth of this company? And so we decided to use Autohive to accelerate the growth of Autohive. And so we took that week and we separated everybody out again, and they built agents related to different parts of our growth pipeline. So marketing, CS, sales type tools, all of that sort of stuff. Where this was hugely valuable this time was not only in the application of AI and our own dog fooding of Autohive, but suddenly everybody actually had a much deeper understanding of marketing and growth and why it matters and how it plugs in and how the metrics work. And we're definitely a bit top heavy on engineering in our organization as a ratio, but that's partly because I want engineering thinking applied to many different domains. I don't say, hey, you sit here and you pull a JIRA ticket and you do it and that's your job. I've seen this talk about the rise of the go-to-market engineer.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell is that? It's just an engineer who you're giving growth work to. So, and that, by the way, is the encouragement I have towards the audience who are leaning into AI, or why they should, is because your ability to wield AI is not tied to software delivery. It applies to everything. And so I do think you might see an industry where you go, gosh, there's a lot of software developers getting laid off. And there are. But at the same time, you're going to see them turning up in those other teams saying, hey, I actually bring expert systems thinking to this domain, and I can help now optimize and automate out this function. So I think we're going to see tech people moving into other types of roles, but still using their technical ability and ideally what they enjoy about that. But just popping back briefly on that, those weeks I've always found are really great for driving up morale, getting the team having a lot of fun, understanding each other better. It also breaks up the year a little bit. It can get a bit tedious, the usual cycles. We still have our stand-ups and various things like that, but having a bit of a different week is a lot of fun, just resets things. It's been really good.
Is one thing that came to my mind when thinking about AI week, for example, but also overall about how much you guys use AI. And I expect many of the tech leaders have conversations with their CFOs about cost of AI. So running a week like this, oh, what plan are we on? What about tokens? How much are we going to spend? I think that's another dimension that people are sometimes maybe blocked by or not sure how to approach, because how much is too much when it comes to spending money? Are we getting the outcomes ROI from all of those tokens or max plans on Claude? How do you approach it with your companies?
Quite differently to how
Okay.
most Kiwi companies approach it. I am liberal with the spend. To give you an idea, firstly, I think it's a mistake to try and set a limit at the start. You want people to learn. Sure, somebody's going to go off and maybe try and spend a ridiculous amount. But to be honest, don't you want the people who are trying to push the limits? That should be the ideal sort of team member that you have. And so if you want a mediocre company, by all means, tell them they get a $20 subscription or that they've got to manage their premium requests. That's ridiculous. As I say, there is a lot. I advise the savvy business people is that right now they can see who in their company is demonstrating high curiosity, innovative thinking, systems thinking, all of that stuff, because they've been the ones running at AI for them. And they should promote those people because they are the ones that are helping those companies not become obsolete. Okay? Frankly, most people in most companies are leading to obsolescence of their own company. Now, you get to the ROI piece, and look, valid question, especially a larger company where people can sit around and wonder about such things all day. That's why we baked right into Autohive an ROI thing on the first page. So it says, hey, based on what's been going on, this is the economic value based on an average salary of what you're getting back out of this. And I don't think enough, whether it's tech leaders or business leaders, are understanding that AI is actually a proxy for productivity. And so if you're trying to handicap that down to $20 or whatnot, that just seems bananas to me to try. And that's the same thing that I think is a mistake when people do look at the headcount reductions. You certainly want to reduce headcount if you've got people there that are putting their boots into the ground to not learn AI, because they're basically going to drag you under. They should not be on your team. And you asked there about what about that situation, and flip it around and say, do you think AI is going to be less important in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years? I think you'd have to be a categorical moron to think that it's going to be less than it is now. Okay, so if we can see that trajectory, what should you do? And it wouldn't be to cut back and restrict it, would it? That would be also pretty moronic. Now, I've talked and I'll wind people up a bit about this because I call it the AI economic maturity model. If you think $20 is what you're going to spend on AI, you're a junior. You haven't figured this out. You don't understand what you're doing. You don't see the ROI. You're not thinking about impact. All you're thinking about is input cost. You're not even thinking about why you're doing it. Then you've got the sort of intermediate, and that's the person who says, yep, I've got a $200 max plan because you know what? I need to keep cooking all day long. There's good ROI here. And then I think of the third level, which is advanced, which is give me as many tokens as I can get my hands on, please. And so one of the things that I instituted back in 2024 even was I actually put TVs up around the office monitoring the token usage of each individual employee. Right. Okay. Now, I didn't do this. And again, a lot of people in tech will be like, oh my God, what a monster. Oh, geez. I'm like, oh, my rights, etc. And it wasn't used in a disciplinary fashion. It was used in a way, the same way that you would have a stand-up, where if a person has no updates for 3 days, you check in. If you see somebody that's in the bottom quintile of token usage, you need to go, hey, this person might need a little bit more guidance and help in thinking about how to use this technology. You got to stop jumping straight to the stick mindset when it comes to management and actually say, we are in a huge change management window right now. You need to make this understood, but you also need to make it clear that it is being monitored. We need to see that we're driving in this direction. And I'll be honest, I certainly have lost some staff who do not want to know about AI. And to be honest, we're better for it.
Before we wrap up, JD, if there is someone sitting in Wellington thinking about building a product company right now, they are just starting and they're asking you, give me advice, what would you tell them?
Firstly, they're on the right track by starting an AI company. Secondly, I'd celebrate the fact that there might be a second capitalist here in Wellington, which would be cool. But no, the advice would be fairly standard, but it's really to actually use your brain and thinking about, and I don't mean that to sound like it's a put down, but it's like everything has changed. Everything that is in a lot of the books about how to do things has changed. So I'll give you a small example. Meetings suck, right? We don't want too many meetings. We want to be able to get our work done. That's been a general challenge for all corporates for the last 50 years is too many meetings leading to too little actual doing of the work. Therefore, we're held back. Nobody really likes them, etc. So in the age of AI, I have a theory that we're going to invert that point. Okay, so the more that the machines can do the toil, so as you actually increase the amount of work that's just being done by AI, and like I say, it's going to go stratospheric over the next couple of years as they can take on larger and larger workflows themselves. You ask the question, what does the human do? And ironically, I think that once you free the human up, they actually are going to want to talk to other humans more, aka meetings. And so I say that to people, I'm like, I don't actually hate the meeting. What I hate is being in a meeting aware that I've still got to go and write my board pack. I got to answer those emails. I got to do this. I got to do that. All these things are happening when I'm in a meeting. It's not really the meeting's fault. And so you go, okay, actually, maybe we want more time to be having human to human conversations once we have got more things being done by AI. So there's that. The second one is, and look, talking of tech layoffs, there's lots of people going, oh, this is not from AI. It's because of overhiring and COVID. And look, they're not wrong. This is a tech leader podcast. You're to blame. You hired those people. You were the one saying, hey, I've got some budget. Let's go get some headcount. Why do we do that? We do that because our ego is tied to a growing number. It's why as a business owner, when I meet people, they say to me, how big is your company? And they expect a headcount number. That's just wrong-headed in every single way. That's not a sign of a successful company. It's often a sign of a bloated, poorly managed company, which I can look out the window at certain tech companies here in Wellington and watch them laying off lots and lots of people. And it's, because the ego of middle managers got out of control. And so now with AI, I do encourage people to say, keep the company slim, keep your operational expenses low, increase the spend with AI. It used to be that you would bring on full-time salaried staff and then you would have contractors. And the idea was that if you have contractors, you have some flexibility to lower or increase the spend on talent. There's now a third option, which is AI. Okay. And so we've got these options. We need to figure out what we're doing. But fundamentally, you can get a lot done. And platforms like Autohive and others are helping people get more done. So I would just encourage to not let their ego get in the way in terms of growing headcount when they don't need it and focusing on elevating that AI understanding. The more people understand about AI, the more curious they are and systems thinkers they are, the more they're going to accelerate those new businesses. There's no reason to build a business the way you used to. And I'll wrap on this last point, and it goes to that comment I made earlier about being a software engineer and a go-to-market engineer, and it's just a software engineer doing work for marketing, right? As we elevate with AI, the span of control, or at least awareness, is going right up. And that's the only way that you can get to that world of working on the business, not in the business. One of the things as CEO, I know the P&L. I know exactly where all the money's going. I know exactly what we're spending where. I know how our marketing's performing. I know what our product roadmaps are. I have to have that top level view to understand how I'm going to direct the company. What I'm noticing is as AI is broadening people's awareness of what's going on, they're actually catching me up in that broad view. Now, just to over leverage the AI reference, think about the context window of an individual. The more they understand the context of the entire business, the better the quality of the decisions that they make. All right. So that's the thing. There's actually a huge window of opportunity coming up where you can help across the business. You can automate things. It's like a win-win. There's so many good things in there. Just try to push past that initial fear that this feels like it's going to change things. It is going to change things, but change is good.
Oh, amazing, JD. I'm coming out of this very optimistic. I hope the audience are getting the same. Thank you for what you're doing, for pushing New Zealand forward and helping us grow and sharing your experiences. I think that's what we need more in our tech community. Being a relatively small country, I think it's really important for us to utilize AI, as you said, to boost their productivity because we cannot afford falling behind as a country.
No, we could create a much, much better country by leaning
Yeah.
into this. We have every opportunity to do. There's no reason to be a laggard here.
Awesome. Thank you, JD.
Thanks so much for having me, Jacob.
That was JD Trask, and if you're not at least a little uncomfortable after that conversation, go and listen again. You'll find links to Raygun and Autohive in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone in your team who's still on the fence about AI. It might be the nudge they need. Until next time.
A special thanks to our sponsor, Wires Uncrossed, helping teams across New Zealand, Australia and beyond untangle software delivery and build systems that truly perform. We're grateful for their support in making this conversation possible. Check them out at wiresuncrossed.co.nz.